My name is Dr. Mary Lou Brotherson, and today is Wednesday, October 15th, 2003. I am here today to interview Sara Auerbach, who is a survivor of the Nazi Holocaust. I am doing this under the auspices of the Holocaust Documentation and Education Center, Incorporated. The purpose of this interview is to add to the oral history of the Holocaust so that through this living memorial, future generations will know what happened. And with this knowledge, we hope to prevent any such occurrence in the future. Hello, Sara Auerbach.
Hi.
How are you today?
Okay, thank God.
We're going to begin our interview with pre-war information. Would you please state your name and spell your name?
My maiden name.
No, your given name now, and then we'll do your maiden name.
My name is Sara, S-A-R-A, Auerbach, A-U-E-R-B-A-C-H.
What was your name at birth?
At birth was a same thing, only with an I, S-A-R-I, my birth certificate. And my last name was Dratler, D-R-A-T-L-E-R.
We will begin by talking about the town from which you came. Please tell me first where you were born, the town and the country.
The time I was born was called Czechoslovakia, and my town was Velké Kapušany.
What was your birth date?
5/25/1927.
Now we'd like to talk a little bit more about the pre-war years. Where did you grow up?
I grew up at the city where I was born till I was about 15 and a half years old.
Near what large city?
Užhorod, that's about 18 kilometers.
Could you spell the name of your hometown and also the city?
My hometown, that was the city, the Velké Kapušany, V-E-L-K-E, with an L has a apostrophe like Velké Kapušany, the K-A-P-U-S-A-N-Y.
Thank you. Approximately how many people lived in your town?
Maybe 3,000-4,000. I was too young to remember those things. I know we had a nice Jewish community.
How large was the Jewish population?
Quite that. We had two schools, one for the conservative and one for the Lubavitcher, the very, very Orthodox.
How did most of the people in your town earn their living?
By the time my father was a tinsman, and he worked and he made a living. We were a lot of children because my mother married my father. My father was a widower with 5 children.
We're talking about the people in your town and how the general population.
They had stores. A lot of them we had I remember one family had store from school supplies. One had, they had land, and they had the land.
They were farmers?
Farmers were doctors, lawyers.
And the Jewish people were mostly?
Yes, they're like dentists and doctors and lawyers. Those were mostly.
And they had businesses like your father?
Not what I know, because as I said, my father passed away before I was old enough to remember. I was 3 years old. When he passed away, my sister was 22 months. And we were left 5 children.
Now we'll talk a little bit about how your family lived in your town during those pre-war years. How many children were in your immediate family?
We were 5 left. 5 were left with my mother. Then, and she worked. If she got a job, she worked. If she didn't, then she didn't. We suffered.
What were the names of your brothers and sisters?
One was Ferdinand, that he didn't survive. One brother is Ernest, which he lives in New Jersey now. I had one brother was Eliezer, we called him Lutz, Eliezer, he didn't survive. And myself and my sister was Clara. She's still alive. She's in Europe. She lives in Czechoslovakia.
What were your parents' names?
My mother was, in Goyish, they called Ilona. And my father's name, her last name was Jakubowicz. And my father's name, first name was the Wojtek, that's in Czech.
And you explained how your parents earned a living.
As I said, my father was a tinsman. When my father passed away, my mother, she sometimes used to do laundry for people and ironing, and sometimes she was very good she went to the people who had chickens, she used to buy, and then go to the Jewish people, sell it, and with a little bit more what she paid for, and what's left, that's what she made a living. It was a hard life. I was too young to understand at that time.
Were you and your family members in any organizations?
No.
No.
Not, as I said, not what I know. I don't know any organizations. There was any.
Okay.
I remember we had 2 rooms, so one of them my mother sometimes used to rent for the Zionist groups. So they used to come. That's how I knew about Israel. They used to come. There was the Shomer Hatzair, and there was the Betar, what they called by us. And they used to come Sundays. They used to come singing. And then I was as a little girl. I used to go and used to stand by the door and watch what they were doing, singing and dancing.
How far were you able to go in schooling?
Only 8 years.
Was this a Jewish school or a
no, public
Czech
school? Yeah, public school.
Do you remember any incidents of anti-Semitism that happened to you?
No,
not
as a child. Not as a child growing up in Czechoslovakia.
Before
we were on the Czechs till 1939. Then the Hungarians came back.
Okay, because the question that I am trying to ask you is if there were any incidents before 1939.
No, not what I know, no.
Now, we should like to discuss the time that Hitler was on the rise to power in Europe before the war came to your country, before your town was occupied. During the pre-war years, what did you hear about what was happening in Germany?
I don't remember anything about those things. I left home when I was about 15 and a half years old.
So you didn't hear anything?
No.
How did your everyday life change as Hitler was gaining power in Europe?
Nothing at home, nothing especially.
Did any of the members of your family, or did you try to leave at this time?
No, I was learning to be a seamstress for a year and a half, and no one.
Now I would like to ask you about the early days of the occupation by the Nazis before the ghetto period. Where were you living when the war broke out on September 1st, 1939?
No, home. I was a little girl.
Okay. What happened?
Once we were packed. I remember as a child, once we were packed, they said that we're gonna have to leave. I remember something. And we packed up, but then, I don't know what happened, we didn't have to leave.
What happened in your town between the time the war started, September 1st, 1939, and the Nazi occupation?
At my town, at home, I don't know, because as I said, we had Hungarians came in, and they stayed, and we had no problems with Germany at that time. And as I said, by the age 15 and a half, I left home.
I have to ask some questions, though, Sarah, to give a format. I'll come back to that in a minute. On what date do you remember the Germans occupying your town?
I don't know. I wasn't home, that's it.
Okay. Describe what you saw when the Hungarians came. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that, as I said, I remember we made little flowers from crepe paper, the flag, and we put it on, and we went waiting for them to come, and there was no problem. They came in without any fight or anything.
So when the Nazis occupied your town, you weren't there?
No.
Okay. During this period of the Hungarian occupation, did any of the non-Jewish population respond to any acts against the Jews?
No, not what I remember, no.
Did your national government, the Czech government, make any attempt to protect its Jewish population?
No, they left, we didn't even know, and we knew, like in the morning I still saw some soldiers leaving, and then in the afternoon the Hungarians came in. There was no fight on any what I know of.
What new laws were imposed on you at that time?
From the Hungarians? Not what I know.
In what ways did your life change?
Nothing's changed because I was still in school.
Would you please describe the day you left your home and what thoughts were in your mind at that time?
I left home because I was learning to be a seamstress, and as a seamstress I couldn't get a job. And as a poor girl, I couldn't stay home. So my mother had a cousin of hers who had a little boy, and she got from the Red Cross that her husband passed away. So she needed someone that she can trust to take care of the baby. So I went to live with her, and she went to work to stay with me.
Where did you go?
I don't remember the city, but it was before a big city called Munkács in the Hungarian, about one stop before. I don't remember the city.
Do you remember how you got there?
I went by trade.
You went by train?
Trade, yeah.
Was there anything eventful during that trip that you can remember?
No, nothing. There's only a young girl.
Now, during the war years, I would like to ask about the ghetto years.
Yeah.
How did you learn that you had to live in a ghetto?
We were in that place. I was there a couple of months already when the Germans came. But they didn't stay too long when they took us away. I remember the last day of Pesach. We were there, and the day after Pesach, they came and told us to pack up and leave. So we packed up, and we went to the station, to the train station, and they put us in a ghetto.
So how did you learn that you had to live in a ghetto?
The Germans took us.
They didn't give you warning?
No, nothing. They just came. They told us pack up and be ready. We're gonna pick you up. We packed up, and matter of fact, she had some money, so she said, I had a skirt. She says, open that skirt on the bottom and put the money in there. You know, we're hoping maybe then we're gonna be needed to use it. And they put us in that city, that Munkács, in a, you know, where they make the bricks. The factory, in the brick factory.
So this was the ghetto of Munkács that you were in?
Yes, it was.
Was there more than one ghetto, or just that?
No, I think there was quite a few of them over there, because there were a lot of people, because from the whole neighborhood they brought in the people.
Do you remember any of their names?
No. I met my sister-in-law's sister. I met her over there, but I don't remember.
Do you remember the approximate date that you entered the ghetto?
It was in 44. In 44, in April 44. And end of May, they started to take us out for the camps, to Auschwitz. Birkenau, I don't know.
Was the ghetto enclosed?
Yes.
How?
Yes.
How is
It was first of all, it was a brick factory, so there were gates, and the German soldiers, they were at the gate. You couldn't go in or out.
What do you recall of the first day that you entered the ghetto?
No, I remember they put us in a place that was straw, and that we slept on. We were there about a month or something, a little over a month.
How many guards were there? Do you recall?
I have no idea.
Do you remember any of the guards and their duties, what they did there? Could you,
First of all, I was a small-town girl, and I was only 15, not yet, and just going on 16. I don't remember much anyway.
would you please describe what living conditions were like in the ghetto? And I'm going to mention many factors, and then if you have an answer,
Okay,
please
let's
do
find
so.
out.
Food.
I don't know, the woman that I was with her, she somehow always bought some food for us. I don't know from where she got it.
Okay.
You know, she had a little boy, so the mother's instincts, I think, was...
Water. Did you have water?
I remember we had water, but in bottles or something, she used to bring water.
Heat.
No,
No heat.
no.
And the sleeping accommodations?
Was on straws, you know, like... They
No
made-
mattress.
No, oh, no. No mattress.
All right.
That's a luxury.
Did you have electricity?
They had electricity, you know, like high up.
What was the sanitation?
Oh my God.
Were there bathrooms for
I
enough?
imagine there had to be, but I really don't remember. I tell you the truth, I really don't know.
Was the health care? Were there epidemics?
No, not what I remember, no.
And what kind of work, detail work, did you do?
We didn't do nothing.
You didn't do
No,
anything.
nothing.
Were you able to get in and out of the ghetto?
No.
What rules or laws were established by the Nazis for the operation of the ghetto?
I don't know. I had no connections with soldiers or anyone else. I really have no idea.
Did the Jewish community organize to help itself in the ghetto that you knew of?
No, I don't
No
know.
schools, no study groups, no prayers?
No, nothing. Not what I don't know.
Now, may we talk about the Judenrat for a moment? How was the Judenrat chosen? The Council of Jews.
I had no connections or anything. I really don't know.
So you don't know whether they
No, I
helped
was too
them.
naive for those things on those days.
And you don't remember any of the leaders' names?
No, none.
Now, I would like to ask you about the Jewish police. Was there a Jewish police in your ghetto?
I imagine was. I had no connection, so I really don't know. I imagine there was.
But you didn't have any
No.
memory of
No.
that. Were there any Christians in your ghetto?
No, they were all Jews. That I do know.
What did you know of any resistance or underground organizations in the ghetto?
None.
You didn't know of
No,
any.
me personally, no.
Were you aware of any individual acts of resistance?
No.
So you wouldn't know of any response by the Nazis if there was?
No, I
because you
don't
didn't know.
No.
So, what immediate members of your family lived in the ghetto with you?
None. I was all by myself.
Were there people other than your family living with you?
No. Just the woman that I was with her and her son, her baby.
How long were you able to be with this person who,
As long as we were in the ghetto.
how long was that?
A little over a month we were in the ghetto.
Did you at that time hear anything about the Nazis' treatment of the Jews in other parts of Europe?
No.
What were the methods used to escape from this ghetto?
I wouldn't know. As I said, I was too young or too naive for those things. Maybe they wouldn't even trust me because of my being so naive.
Did you know of any suicide attempts?
No.
What was the most powerful memory you have of the ghetto experience?
Nothing special. I know we were mostly in the house, in the place over there, because you couldn't go around or dance outside or something. We were inside.
Let us talk now about the deportation from the ghetto. On what date, approximately, was the ghetto liquidated?
Liquidated, I don't know, because I went, there was still people left behind, that's what I know. I left, I think, was the second group that left. And it was somewhere in the middle of May, end of May, something like.
Was the liquidation or the movement done in stages or all
Yes,
at one time?
in stages. No, in stages. There were a lot of people.
What? Was it a general action or against specific groups in the ghetto?
No, general action.
Did you try to hide?
No.
Tell me about the day you left the ghetto.
The same thing, they told us to take our luggage or package and come to the train. When we got to the train, and we had to put down, we wanted to take with both bags, so the German said to her, no, just one. So she took one of them, and with that we went up on the train, on the wagons.
The person who you were with, the family that you were with, did they leave then with you?
Yes.
The woman and her little boy?
Yeah.
And you had no personal possessions that you could take with you because she had her
Yes,
bag?
yeah. No, but we were together, so yeah.
So you did take some?
Whatever I had in her bag, I don't know.
Where were you gathered for the deportation?
But they took us all to the train.
In Munkash?
Yeah, in the Munkac train, yes.
Please describe what you can remember of that scene.
I don't know, they put us into a train. There was only a small window. You know, the wagon trains that you carry cattle. And we put us in, and they started to take us. It was already started to get warm, and put us in like sardines. And with nothing to, you had to go to bathroom. There was no bathroom or nothing. So we used to put up a towel or something, and behind it, someone had to go to the bathroom in a corner.
Did you have any food?
No.
Did anybody try to escape?
Not in the group where I was, no. You couldn't escape. There was no way. The window was, not only that was a small window, it has like wire across. It, like this in this way. It makes sure that you couldn't escape.
What was the condition of the people during the transport?
Pretty bad. Some people were fainting, and some people were screaming, and some people was, I want to get out, and how to say it, a whole problem, everyone wanted to get out, but you couldn't.
Can you describe the length of time that you traveled?
I think it was 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days we were in the train.
Is there anything else you can tell us about that trip?
Was bad. Was pretty bad. Everyone wanted to come to the window to get some bread. It was pretty bad.
So
especially with the children.
It was very dark?
Dark, no light, no nothing. No nothing.
Now we'll talk about your experience during the concentration camp experience. What camp did you arrive at first?
When we arrived to Birkenau. And then when we came off the train, the baby was used to me. So we came off the train, I took the baby, and there was a German soldier, and he said something in German. I didn't understand something, and then the woman came over to me, and she took the baby away from me, and I went on one side, and she went on the other side. And if he wouldn't have said anything, I imagine I would have gone on the other side with the baby.
Approximately what was the date of your arrival at Birkenau?
Somewhere in May. I don't remember dates, I really don't.
Were you alone or with members of...
Only with that woman and child.
Okay. Just that one?
Just that one.
Describe,
and as I said, I went on one side and she went on the other.
Describe the first moment of your arrival at the camp as you descended from the cattle car. What were your first impressions? Was it day or night?
In daytime. It was daytime. And after that, they took us walking.
What did you see?
We saw a lot of like barracks, a lot of them, but we didn't know at that time what it is. And
Did you smell anything?
Later I smelled, yes, a lot, and we saw a lot, but not at that time. I don't remember any smell.
Did you hear anything?
No, we didn't know anything about the camps. When we came into the camps, we didn't know nothing about the camps.
So you had no thoughts?
No, none at all. Didn't even thought of those things, that it can happen.
Who met you as you descended from the cars?
German soldiers.
What, if anything, were you told would happen?
Nothing. Oh, that for me, they didn't say nothing. But because she went, so she said, you're gonna go, you're gonna go to a working, you're gonna go into work, and then you're gonna be together with your family and all that. But for me, I was all alone.
What happened to your personal belongings at this time?
Everything left on the train.
Was there a selection process when you first arrived?
That was the selection that we put on this side.
Okay, could you describe it, please?
As I said, we came down from the train, and the young people were put on one side, the men on one side, the women on the other side, and the elderly people and children all on the other side. And they took us in a place, and the first thing they cut our hair, and then they took us through to take a shower. So on one side you left your clothes, and when you came out on the other side, they gave you new clothes. And they took us in a place, and we sit down. They set us down on the floor, and then we were sitting, and they started to select for work, people for work. And I was sitting, and everyone was jumping, take me. And I was just sitting quietly. I said, what am I going to jump? You're not going to choose me. And maybe because I didn't jump, they chose me. And I went to work. I got a job on they called it the Brzezinka, that all the clothing that we left in the train, they later bought those clothing to us on the job, and we had to shred it, cut them and shred them into pieces. New pieces we had to put on the side. And the other thing, we had to cut it, and they took all those we cut, and they made, for factories, they used to mix it with papers or whatever, and make new clothing, new material from it. And there was a lot of palaces, and there was a lot of things people, just hide in the clothing. So they told us, well, if we find jewelry, we should put it in a side for them. The Germans came, and all the new things they take. So what we did, no one wanted to cut taluses. So we took all the clothing, what we shred, we put everything in the taluses, because we didn't want to cut it. And the Germans came, and they took it away.
Could you tell us about your living conditions, the food that you had?
And the camp where I was, they used to give us a large bowl, I don't know, pretty sized bowl. We didn't have no spoons or anything.
This was in Birkenau?
Yeah. Birkenau or Auschwitz already, they took us in there. And they gave us, we used to sit, first of all, they put us in a quarantine for 6 weeks. For a couple of weeks of quarantine, make sure we are, and if someone was, there was a lot of people who were on medications. So when they stopped the medications, they started to scream at night. So when they were screaming, they right away the Germans came, and right away they took them away. And then we started to see the fires. When we went to work many times, we were stopped because a truck was coming, and the truck was full of people. running straight. They didn't know where they're going, but we knew.
Were there toilet facilities where you lived?
There were like 20 in a row. And they used to take us at once, all of us, because we were in quarantine, so they used to take us, all of us, at once. You couldn't get out, if you ran into your block, you couldn't get out on your own.
Were there washing facilities?
They used to take us once a week, once in 2 weeks, and they wash us with cold water. Who wanted to go in winter in cold water, but we had to. It's the same thing. You never wore the same clothes twice. When you went in for a shower, you left your clothes here. You went to the shower, you came on the other side, and they give you new clothes.
What were your sleeping accommodations?
There was like, first of all, there was 1, 2, 3 shelters. It's like bunks, and we used in a place like, like the size of this, I don't know, we used to have 10, 12 girls. If one wanted to turn at night, so one turned, everyone had to turn, because it was so tight, no blankets. It's on the wood, on the plain wood, that's where we slept.
Now, let's go back for a moment about when you were in the process of entering the camp. You said that you were showered and you were in quarantine.
Yeah.
When were you given your tattoo?
Oh, but, yeah, you're right. I got the tattoo. They took us, they chose us, and then they put us in Germany. It's very punctual. They put us on it alphabetical. And as I was a D, so I wasn't too far back, and they gave us a number in the high hand. And then we went over to the girls, and they took like this, and they had a pen, like your pen, and the pen had the ink in it, and like with the ink, with one hand they held the hand, and with the other one they put the numbers in. Matter of fact, I got it twice, because when they finished that, so we went like this, and we looked it out. So a lot of it didn't show, so I don't know, some time later they went to see if the numbers are exactly. So they went and they saw that mine wasn't exactly right, they were missing, so I got a second time to make sure that it shows the number correctly.
And they shaved your head, you said?
Oh yeah, that they did. As soon as we got there, the first thing they did, they shaved our head. Some people were shaved, some people were just with a scissor, because there were so many, they didn't have the chance, so some of them were just cut. And what happened when they just cut it, after a couple of weeks, your hair started to grow back in faster than the person who had bald-headed.
Tell us about your daily routine in your life at the camp. Did you have roll call?
Yeah, when we got up 5 o'clock, because I was alone, so there were 2 girls, they had 2 sisters, so they needed a 5th one. So I was always with them when they got up, because if you didn't stand in line, exactly with the 5, they sometimes used to beat you. So this way, we were always ready to stand in line.
Did you have labor details?
Yes, we used to get up at 5 and give us some hot, it's supposed to be coffee, but some liquid, warm liquid, and that's it. And we went to work, and when we came back, we used to get a piece of bread, and sometimes we used to get, once in a blue moon, they used to give us a small meatball-like. What meat was, or what it was in it, I don't know, but we gladly grabbed it. Usually Sundays they used to do that.
Was there any special way you could help yourself to deal with this intense hunger?
No, there was no way. You just suffered. You were hungry.
Were there any further selections while you were in camp?
Not in mine, no.
Did you or other prisoners do anything special to help each other or avoid being selected during the selection process?
They didn't select from us in our mine group that they didn't do any selection.
Did you have any special function or position in the camp?
No,
Were you ever ill or injured?
no, not really, no.
Can you describe any incidents where you or your fellow prisoners helped each other?
No, there was no help. As I said, the only helping we tried to, you had to get up on the appel. You have to make sure that you stay in line and then you're ready to, because when they came to count you, everyone should be in order, in line.
Were you particularly close to any particular person?
No,
Any group?
no. I was always alone.
Where was your camp located?
I think it was in Auschwitz, either Auschwitz or one of them.
It's Poland.
Poland, yeah.
How close was the camp to a town? It was right in Auschwitz.
It was, yeah, in the Auschwitz, whatever it's called in Polish, yeah.
Did you have contact with the local population?
No, I haven't seen any of them, only the people in the camps.
Please describe what you saw of the physical setup of the camp. For instance, whether there was a fence or a wire.
Yeah, there were wires and there were all electric. If you touched it, then you got killed right there on the wires.
And the guard towers.
Same thing, if they shoot you, they will shoot you. They were in the corners. Wasn't too many, I didn't remember seeing too many guards because they didn't need it. They had the fences.
What different types of prisoners were there?
There was a lot of people from Slovakia, because when Germany, when Hungary came on one side, Germany came on the other side. So part of Slovakia, Germany took it over. And they were the first ones who got into the camps. And they became the local testers, and they became the upper, in the barracks that they were the upper ones.
Okay, were they Gentiles or mostly Jews?
There were some Gentiles, but not too many, but there were Jews, mostly Jews.
Were there political prisoners there?
There were some, yeah, there were political. They had, you could know who is a political prisoner because some people have like a corner, like a half Jewish store. That means that they are Jewish. Political prisoners, they used to have on their striped clothes, they used to have like a red patch on it. They knew that he's a political prisoner.
How about the gypsies?
I never had any connections with them, but I know they were there.
Were there criminals in your block?
No, not in our block, no. Only Jews.
Only Jews in your particular block?
Yeah, the only Jews.
Did you hear of any other people any other place, like Jehovah's Witnesses?
No.
Or homosexuals?
Not what I know.
So, could you recall how each group was identified? You said the political prisoners.
The politicals, I know they had a flag stamp, but usually there was other ones, but I don't remember exactly what the signs they were.
But you had a yellow star.
We had a yellow star, yes.
Was there a difference in the treatment of these prisoners?
I don't know, because as I said, with my block, my barrack where I was, there were all only Jews. Matter of fact, from different cities. When we came out to Appel, this was for one city, one town, city was for the other, and the third one was like this.
Who, if other than the Germans, guarded the camp?
There were some German prisoners, who were prisoners from Germany, and they were...
Any others other than Germans?
Yeah, they were...
Guards?
No, I'm not talking about the guards, the German soldiers.
Let me go back.
Yeah.
Who, if other than the Germans, guarded the camp?
You're talking about German soldiers or German people?
No, we're asking other than Germans, people who weren't German?
Only the ones who come, from camp, who were in the camp. But like so, a lot of them were political prisoners, and all these people were above us. Because first of all, they came earlier in the camps too.
So not only were they Slovakians, what other?
Yeah, there were other ones too, yes.
Do you remember? Do you remember any commanding officers or guards? Anything about them?
No.
What forms of punishment did you witness in the camp?
I didn't witness any. Not what I remember any.
So what form of punishment did you experience?
No, later in a different camp, I had punishment because I was in I think it was Ravensbrück, and we used to clean the streets because there was bombs. They bombed the city, so we were out and cleaning the street, and there was snowing, and I had no shoes, and they were supposed to bring in those shoes that had wooden shoes. And so one day I stayed in the barrack, and on my luck, the German came, and they wrote down your number. As soon as they can take your number, that's it. So the next morning they came, and they brought a truck, and we had some people who were passed on, and some very sick people, and they put all of them in the truck. And I knew that they called my number, so I went over to the German woman, and I told her, listen, I said, why don't you take a look at my list, the list. I said, I never stayed in the barrack, not one day. This is the only day I was ever stayed behind in the barrack because I had no shoes. So she said, because you're small. In German, she said, because you're klein. She said, because I was small. That's why he chose me, and that's why I had to go up on the truck with the dead. They gave us a piece of bread, and we went. I don't know what happened. They took us in another camp, and they put us in a hospital. And in that hospital, I was just somehow, because I wasn't sick, so they put the healthy people, they put them to the nurses, close to the nurses.
Was this right near the camp, near Auschwitz-Birkenau?
I have no idea. I don't remember which camp they took us in. But I know they put me in a hospital. But that was close to the end of the war.
Okay, can we come back?
Okay.
Did you know of any attempts to escape?
No.
Do you know of any instance when a whole group was responsible and punished for the act of a single person?
No.
Were there any children in the camp?
There were, as far as I know, they kept the twins. Anytime someone came with twins, they took them on the side because they said that the blood from twins is supposed to match up to any other person. And what they did, they fed them and they took blood from the children and they sent it to the soldiers on the front.
Where did you hear that?
In the camp. We knew about that in the camp.
And that's the explanation they gave you?
That's the explanation what I knew. If it's true or not, I don't know. But that's what the explanation I was.
Do you know who was in charge of that?
What's his name was? Mengele. Matter of fact, I was once, from time to time he used to come and make a surprise visit. We came out of the shower, naked, and we passed, and he had such a sharp eye. I had a tiny, tiny dot on my breast because I was very, very young and I wasn't developed yet. And he put me on a side, and I thought, that's it, I'm finished. But somehow they didn't take me away. Somewhere was written I have to live, and they didn't take me away. They just put me in another box.
Did he ask you questions?
No. He never asked anyone questions. He was a tall, good-looking man. And he just, not only me, quite a few other people.
Was there any visitation by an outside organization?
No. No one could come in.
Was there any attempt to observe any educational or religious practice?
No. Matter of fact, if they, in the beginning, I remember seeing, the Jewish people, they to put on the talis and all that, they laugh at them. They were laughing.
So you saw the men with their talesim?
In the beginning, yeah, when they came off, we came off from the train, so they was put on our side, so the very Orthodox people, they started to daven.
Were there any acts of sabotage or any forms of resistance attempted by the prisoners?
Not what I know, not in mine, not where I was, I don't know.
Did you witness or participate in any sabotage?
No.
Do you remember who the commandant of the camp was?
By name? No. I have no idea.
Do you remember the
I know
function?
one thing, they always wore boots up to here and spotless. They were always spotless. Yeah. With big dogs.
Describe the functions of the Blockel test.
What?
The block tester.
Oh, the Blockel tester. When I was, they weren't that bad, but there were some blocks that they were very bad. First of all, the beds had to be made perfect. If it wasn't perfect, you were in trouble. Even though we had nothing on the bed, just a piece of wood, but there was one blanket that you had to cover the bed. And if that blanket, the corner wasn't exactly right, then you used to get into trouble.
How about the capo?
There were couples, but I had no connection any of them. You see, if you didn't do things wrong, you didn't get into trouble. And I was too young, too naive
Did you know anything about their attitudes towards the inmates?
No.
What were the Sonderkommandos at your camp? You remember?
Who?
A Sonderkommando.
I don't.
Okay, you don't know that term?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. How long did you remain at this particular camp?
Quite a few months. I know I was in Auschwitz quite a few months. And from there, they started to take us out.
We'll come to that in a minute. Were you able to get any news from the outside world?
No.
Did you have hope that the outside world would rescue you?
Never thought of it that anyone can rescue in a place like that.
Did you hear of Roosevelt's death before the liberation?
No.
How did you feel about the possibility that the camp might be bombed?
No. There was one camp was bombed, what I remember, but I don't remember if I was already in camp or I heard it after the camp. I really don't know, but I know that one of them was bombed.
What were the first signs for you that the war was coming to an end?
There was none. I was liberated the last day of the war, May 8th.
Okay, we're going to come back to your liberation.
Okay.
Because I know that you were transferred out of Auschwitz.
Yeah, but well,
Okay. Could you please think back? What single event for you was the most difficult of all of your camp experiences?
Oh, God.
Was there any other incident that stood out in your mind?
I'm trying to remember, but I don't. There was much, but the beginning was very hard. You know,
The adjustment.
First of all, we were young, we were naive. We didn't know what to expect. And whatever came up was different, so was pretty hard.
Did you ever experience complete despair when you simply felt like giving up?
No, not really. Maybe it's just by nature. I never did. However, there was always hope.
Was there any single factor which you feel helped you to survive?
Yes, there was, as I said before, that camp that they put me in a hospital. And they put me between, close to the nurses. And there was a Polish woman. She suddenly said, I look like her daughter. I always say, wherever she is, God bless her. Because without her, I wouldn't have survived. She used to put, the edge of the bed. She always used to put some food in for me. And that, I being in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And, you didn't do nothing. You just stayed in bed. And food I had extra. And that gave me, I became, I don't know how to say it in English, zu sich, I came to
Energy.
and I got energy, and I became, because I started to gain some weight, I imagine too, and I got strength.
So she was a Polish woman?
Polish woman, a Christian woman. Matter of fact, they were bombing it. When they were bombing, so she ran and she grabbed me, and she laid on top of me. Because she said I look like her daughter.
Was she a nurse or a volunteer?
No, she was one of the, I don't know, was volunteer or what, I don't know.
And you don't remember the city that this hospital
No,
was?
I don't remember which camp it was. But if it wouldn't have been with her, I wouldn't have survived. Because from there, they took us, we started to walk. The Germans took us walking. For 3 weeks we were walking with the German soldiers.
Was this the death march?
I don't know was that much or what, but we were walking. They took us from town to town, and we were walking. Matter of fact, we went through one city that was bombed, so it was like a little forest there. So we all ran into the forest. I thought maybe that's it. The Germans came, they collected us, and they must still continued walking until they took us into the camp in the evening. They took us to a big bridge, and they were saying, how come they didn't bomb the street, this bridge, that we shouldn't have to go through it no more. And night times we heard big bombing. And
So you think you were somewhere in Poland, or?
no, I think it was Germany.
Oh, so your march was from Poland?
Yeah, because I was in a city called Braunschweig. And I think from there, I don't know, as I said, they took me from there, they took us in the, after the hospital, they started to take us on walk with no food, with nothing. And the German people left their home because there were bombings too much. So they left their home and they were walking too. They went with wagons and their stuff. And we went too. They were walking. So
Did they share any food with you?
No. What we did, they used to peel their potatoes and drop it in the floor. We took out those pills and we wiped it off. And if you had water units, and we ate that raw, dirty. Like that, that was our food.
So
there was no
how
food.
did you sleep at night?
On the streets. We took it. No, they used to take us into a camp somewhere. And we used to sleep over at the camp. The next morning they took us again. With no food, nothing.
What clothing did you have?
Oh God, what they gave us. Matter of fact, I got liberated in the camp's clothes.
Were the uniforms?
I didn't have. I think by the time I liberated, I didn't have the uniforms, those stripes clothes. I didn't have it. They must have changed it somewhere.
So they were marching you along with German citizens.
They were marching us along, and the Germans, because they knew if they're going to see some striped clothes, the Americans, they won't bomb. So that's why I think that's why they took us with them.
I see. And you remember crossing a bridge?
Yeah. And as I say, in the evening we got into the camp, and in the morning there was no more German soldiers.
Do you know what camp it was?
It called Malchow. Malchow.
So this was on German territory.
I think it was.
Do you know what city it was near? So there were guards there?
No, where we came in were guards. The Germans took us in. But by the next morning, we got up, there were no Germans, and then about 10, 11 o'clock, the Russians came in.
Okay. Have you any idea of the approximate date?
May 8th, the last day of the war. I found out later.
May the 8th,
May 8th,
1945.
We were liberated.
And so you were still alone?
All alone, always alone. all through the years.
Could you describe the moment that you arrived at this last camp when you walked there?
The night before, as I said, they were bombing the city. So there was some horse that was killed. So people who had knives cut pieces of meat from the horse. And they got into the camp, they put on a fire and they cooked it. And if you was enough, they gave you some. And that's what we ate in the morning. As I said, the morning we got up, there was no soldiers, no Germans, no one.
What did you think?
Nothing. We knew that the Russians are close. We knew that because we could hear the bombing and the shooting and all that.
About how many of there were you?
Oh, there was quite a few of us, quite a couple of hundred, quite a few hundred.
Were there any toilet facilities there?
Yes, because this was a regular camp, and then they took us in the camp. So they always made all the facilities for bathrooms. There was only one line, and a lot of them.
But there weren't any roll calls this time?
No, there was none. We got up in the morning, as I said, and they were gone.
Okay. Now, with the Russians coming into the camp, can you remember the different experiences of this?
Yeah, they had to start running because they started to break down there to rape the girls. I was not yet 18 at that time. So I got in somehow. I got together with a woman and her daughter. And together the three of us started to walk. And we walked to a train. And that time we got up on the train. But what the Germany did, they wanted us to get out of the way because there was a lot of people. So they took us out, and the motor turned around, went back, and we got stuck in a place there in the train. So we saw that no one there. We came down from the train, and we started to walk again. And on our way, you put your thumbs up, and a truck stopped. They were carrying, those big trucks, and it was carrying potatoes. The truck stopped, and we went up at the truck, and he took us into Berlin. And that time he was a Russian soldier. He knocked on the door, and they let us in. We came in. It turned out that the soldier was a Jewish Russian soldier. And he brought in some food and potatoes, and we ate. And he was sitting and talking to me. At that time, I was still a little better in my Slovak language. And he is Russian, so we was able to understand each other. And suddenly he got a call, and he had to leave. So we stayed overnight over there. And from there, in the morning, we got up and we left. And we left it, and what the Russians did in Germany, the first thing they did, they changed on the street signs into Russian. So you couldn't read. So we were asking questions. And we went over to soldiers asking questions how to go. So what they did, they put us on a side. And we were waiting. And all day long, anytime someone came asking questions, they kept us on the side all day. End of the day, but this was really for our benefit. Because what they did, they took us into a camp. And each person, if you came from Czechoslovakia, they put you with the Czechoslovakian. You came from Hungary, they put you with Hungarians. And then they took a train, each people to the country, and they took us home to go back to your own country. And I came up to Budapest. And in Budapest, when I came off the train, because I still had to go for another train to go home, but when I found out that my city was taken over by Russians, and I didn't know who is left alive in my family, so I didn't want to go home. And when I came off the train, someone stopped me and says, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "Yes." So they took me on a side and they put us in a school. But on our way home, they always, wherever we stopped, they used to take us our names, where we came, where we were born, where we were taken to camps and everything. Later I found out that those names, they put it in the newspaper. And
This is in Budapest.
yeah, they put it, not only, but before we came, wherever we stopped, they used to ask questions and write on the papers, and they put it in the newspapers to let people know who is alive. My brother found out that I was alive and I'm on my way home. I didn't know they are home. So I stayed in Budapest, but I stayed there only a couple of weeks because I heard about Israel.
Before we get to Israel,
Yeah,
let's move back to this liberation
yeah.
experience. What kind of treatment did you receive from the staff who was involved in this place where you were received?
They are in
The
in
school
Budapest.
that you mentioned.
Yeah. They gave us somebody, but as I was very naive, I had a little jacket, so I put my money in the jacket pocket. I never thought that someone, because I know I wouldn't touch something that don't belong to me. So the next day I came in, and there was 1,500 whatever coronas, the Hungarian money. One of them was gone. The big money was gone. So the other one, I didn't have no pocketbooks. I didn't have anything. And I was too naive or too ashamed to go out to buy for myself clothes, because I didn't, I came home with the shoes on the camps and everything.
How did the survivors react towards you at the time of the liberation, the people around you?
Because the camp that they took us in the school, they were all the same as I was. They were all people from there. I met someone, he took me to a concert, which I never knew about a concert till then. And I know for me it was something very different, but otherwise I had not much connections with outside people. I was there only for 2 weeks.
What was your physical condition?
I imagine I wasn't sick or anything. I was lucky. I was never sick in the camps either, because if I would have gotten sick, I wouldn't survive.
How much did you weigh?
Oh, I don't know. I never weighed myself. I was like that, I know. But I never weighed myself.
What were the reactions of the liberators to what they found?
From
The people who liberated you, who took you.
the Russians, soldiers, so I had no connections with them. Matter of fact, as I said, you had to start moving away from them. Shouldn't get raped.
So you were there for 2 weeks,
In Budapest, only 2 weeks.
and your march that you were on, you believe your idea was that they marched you to save the Germans who were leaving
I
the
think
cities.
so. I definitely think so, yes.
About how many people survived that march of the group that you were with?
I imagine all of it, most of us went into the camp, all that we were walking, we walked into the camp. Those who walked in the camp, they all survived, except maybe later they died or something, I don't know, but in the camp, we all survived. We all came in walking.
Okay, now you're leaving this place still by yourself,
But all by myself.
and so where and how did you leave there?
I was sitting on a bench, and on one end there was a person talking to another one, and I overheard talking about Israel. And I was just sitting quietly and just listening, and the person who was talking to the other person, she must have noticed that I was listening to them. So she came over to me and she says, "No, and what do you think? What's your plan?" So I started to talk. I said, "I would like to go to Israel." Because as I said, I didn't know who left alive in my hometown. And my hometown was taken over by Russians. So I didn't want to go there. I wrote some letters home because we had Christian people that we were very close. So I wrote to them letter, and I found out later that they did give those letters to my brother and my sister. And my brother went looking for me. But by the time he went looking for me, I was gone. I was back because with the group, they put me together with other people who wanted to go to Israel, and they took us back to Vienna in Germany, and we were there a couple of weeks.
In Austria?
In Austria, until they bought some trucks, middle of the night, and they bought trucks and they took us to Italy. And
Who are these people that did this?
the Jewish soldiers from England. There was a Jewish brigade.
Do you remember what it was called?
No, I know. I only know that
This was a brigade of British Jewish.
British Jewish brigade. That's for as far as I know. And they came with those big trucks, and it was like covered. And they put us in. They told us to be quiet. And overnight, they must have brought up the guards or whatever, and they took us to Italy.
Now, your stopover in Vienna, how long was that?
We were there about 4 weeks. As a matter of fact, they told us we can dress nicely and all that weird clothes.
And where did you live while you were in Vienna?
In a hotel. They put us in a hotel.
Now, this was a Jewish group that
Jewish
sponsored
group,
it.
yeah, they smuggled us from Hungary to Austria, Vienna, and they put us in a hotel.
How many of there were you?
Oh God, quite a few hundred, I imagine. Couple of hundred people.
Men and women?
Men and women.
Any children at all?
No, not what I remember, no. And then from there, as I said, we were there a couple of weeks. And from there, when they collected enough people, they put us up again on the trucks and they took us to Italy. It was a place called Treviso. And I was there quite
This is northern Italy or southern Italy?
Oh, I don't know. It was somewhere around Milan. Somewhere. I don't know. It was. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, it was northern Italy.
And they took us there. And matter of fact, we stayed there because this place was like a, how you call it? You know, when they brought other people, they stopped in this place. We made sandwiches and gave the people the sandwiches, and they continued further to go into Israel, and we stayed behind, always making the sandwiches and all those things. And I was there a couple of months. Then from there, they took him to in Milano. God, there was a school. I don't remember what it was, but it was a very beautiful place, and they kept us. We were there for.
Was it a palace?
Something like was a very. I know we had steps upstairs. Beautiful place. I forgot what it's called.
This was in Milan.
In Milan, yeah. And we were there. Not too for a little while, not too long. Then we took us to a place called Trarate Abbiate, a town in Italy. And we was there. Same thing, a couple of months until I imagine they collected again enough people to go to Israel.
Was this from the time that you were liberated
In May.
In May, this
Yeah.
is in Budapest,
Yeah.
to now, what?
By the time I was going to Israel, we got up on a boat, a fishing boat. Those that you go like you sleep in like a hammock, one on top of the other. And they made it out like it was a fishing boat. It's called Antisareni, and they put us on, a lot of people, and we took us to Israel. And a couple of months before we got to Israel, the English, they flew around in the ship, and they found us because we were all on top. So they took us into the camp called Athlete in Israel, and they kept us in quarantine.
How long was this trip from Italy?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
In this,
We left end of December, and we got to Israel in the first week of January.
Of 1946.
46, yes.
So you were on these boats, and did you have food or
Yeah,
shelter?
they gave us food. Matter of fact, a lot of people used to get sick, throwing up. I somehow never got sick. I never threw up. I never got sick on the boat. We were there 2 weeks. And the kids, as I said, and we were caught by the English soldiers. And this was before Cyprus. We got, they gave us, there was still enough, we got certificates, and they let us in the country.
Now, were you in another camp or a kibbutz or?
Yeah, I came, I came with a friend and went to Ramat Gan to his aunt. She has an aunt over there. But I stayed there only a couple of weeks, and I somehow felt uncomfortable. I was already 18 years old, and I was quite uncomfortable. So I said, you know what? Let me go back to my group, which was in a place called Kfar HaRo'eh, but across from Kfar HaRo'eh, they put on called, the later they went up to, was called Irgun Tukuma. I imagine it still exists in Israel. And I stayed there about a year, but what happened, I had a brother here from the older children. There was one brother was here, like half brother. And before he left, my mother went to say goodbye to him. So she told him, don't forget about the children. So she says, I won't. And one thing, he sent me papers. He sent my brother and my sister in Europe papers too. And he sent me papers. I thought I got papers and I go to Israel. I mean to the United States. But I had to wait 12 years to come to United States. In the meantime, I got married, and I got 2 children were born in Israel. And we waited, we came, in the meantime, my husband had papers too, to come to the United States, because he had a grandmother here. So she made out papers. So we came on his papers, but on my quota, because from Czechoslovakia, the quota came sooner than he from as of Poland, because at that time his city was Poland. Now it's called White Russia. And waited 12 years to come to the United States.
Now, before you met your husband,
Yeah.
when you were in Israel, did you go to work?
Yeah. I was working, I couldn't get, it was the war started then. I came to Israel in January 46. And it was a hard time, the war started out. So I got to a friend of mine, I got a job. She was a teacher and she had a friend. I went to work for a woman, she just came out of the hospital. And she needed some help in the house. So I worked as a housemaid. Matter of fact, I got married, I was there, and when I got pregnant with my first child, I fainted on the job. And the doctor told me that I'm not supposed to, because I was too skinny and too not developed enough. The doctor said I shouldn't work. And then I stopped working. But till then I worked as a housemaid quite a long time.
Now, how did you meet your spouse, your husband?
Oh God, I met him on a pickup. You might call it as a pickup. I went to the cities looking for a job. And I was sitting, and I had to come back 1 o'clock. And I was sitting on a bench in Sderot Rothschild in Israel. There was a time I used to be very, very blonde. And I had long hair, because from the camps, after that I never cut my hair. I had long hair. He passed from because the park is here, and there is streets on each side of the park. And he passed on a bicycle. He thought of me, that I have one of his friends, because he didn't see my face, just saw my blonde hair in the back. He called out Sarka, and my name is Sarah. So I turned around, and he says to me, how a young girl is not ashamed to sleep in the middle of the day in a park. So I said, excuse me. I said, I'm not sleeping. I have an interview, and I had to wait till 1 o'clock, and I had no place to go. So when he turned around, he saw my number, and I saw his. So the whole attitude changed, because this was in 1947. So the whole attitude changed. He says, you know something? I live with an elderly couple. I have a bed over there. He says, it's not nice to sit alone in a park. He says, you can, I'm working. He says, you can stay there till you have to go for a job interview. And that's how we met. And we went out for about 3 months. And I saw he didn't say anything, so I said, listen, do you have any intention to get married? So he said, no, he doesn't know.
What's his name?
Baruch. And he says, I don't know, I want to go to the United States. I said, listen, I have nothing against you. I like you. But I don't want to go too much around with someone that has no intention, because I don't want to get into trouble or anything. And I left him. And you know, Raisi says, Bashert, I was going one day home from work. And he got, because he had a brother in Israel, and he was going to the service, so he got a 24-hour leave. He was already in the service at that time. He had a 24-hour leave to come and say goodbye to his brother. And his brother had a little girl that time. So, and I was walking on the street, and I bumped into him again. And that time he said, listen, if you still want to get married, he says, I'll marry you. And that was 55 years ago, with 3 children. The youngest one was already born in the United States.
So now we can hear some of the information in regard to leaving Israel. You were married and you had
2 children.
2 children.
A daughter and a son.
Were there any Jewish agencies that helped you
For what?
to
No.
leave?
No. We got
It
papers.
was just your brothers
Yeah,
sending you.
but my papers told us if you want to go to United States, this is your last chance. If you don't take that chance, you lose it. And we took it. And the best thing I did in my life by coming to United States. Because what I have accomplished here, I would have never been able to accomplish it in Israel. I don't think so.
How did you feel about leaving Israel and emigrating to a new country?
It was hard, you think about it, but I don't think we thought about it because I didn't know what to expect in the United States. And as I said, in Israel, I was home. I didn't work because my children were only 15 months apart. So I was stayed at home, and we came here. I didn't work for quite a few years until my husband went into business.
Let's go back a little to the trip to America.
Yeah.
Who met you upon your arrival?
My husband had a big family here, uncles and aunts, and they all waited, his brother, they all waited at that airport. Matter of fact, the uncle and his brother, they were so anxious to see us that they passed a place they weren't allowed to go. And they had to get injections, anti-tetanus or something kind of injections, because they went into that place. They weren't allowed, but they were so anxious to see. So the whole family was, from my side, my brother didn't come because he's much older than me. He already passed away. He was much older. He's about almost 20 years older than me.
Where were you taken then from the airport? This was New York?
Yeah, in New York, yes. Mm-hmm. He had a brother who was in Canada, and he put up the money for an apartment, and he gave some money for my sister-in-law to buy some furniture, so bought us he was quite well off at that time. He bought us a bed and a children's bed and a kitchen table and a dresser, just something to be. So we were right away, we had an apartment.
What did you do to earn a living when you first arrived?
When I first arrived, I didn't work. My husband was working. I didn't work.
What did he do?
He was working, in the beginning he was working for a building like stoves, refrigerators, a company.
Manufacturing.
Something, but he got hurt. There was a guy, a Polish guy, then I don't think he liked too much Jews. and he had to hold, he was inside, the other one was outside, and he had to hold the metal, and he knocked the metal and he cut his finger. So he wasn't working for a while, and then later he got a job. He was working with an import-export company. He was working with him for a while till another guy came. He saw my husband working, he's making a good, that he's working well, so he took him over. Had him work for him a couple of months and went out of business. So my brother-in-law, who was in a candy store business, who took him in, and they went into a candy store business. But the partnership didn't work out, so we paid him out, and I came in to help my husband. At that time we had our third baby. He was just 2 years old, my two older children.
Now, how did you cope with all these new people and this new language?
I picked it up by being in the business, in the store. I picked up the language very easy. And not only that, when my older kids started school, and my daughter picked up the language very fast. She was 7 and he was 6. But she had friends, all American children. So if she made a mistake, they corrected her. They never laughed at her. They corrected her the language. And she started school, she was in 2nd grade or 3rd grade, and the teacher was talking about who wasn't born in the United States, so she picked up her hand. So the teacher wouldn't believe that she wasn't born in the United States, so she called me in. And I came, and I opened my mouth. She knew right away that she was telling the truth. And through the children, so she told me that I should help the children read. So we used to sit down I used to sit in the middle, the two kids on each side, and we used to read, because to me, the letters was familiar, because in Europe, the same alphabet. But I just read that the lady, when I said the word, they understood, so they corrected how to read it the right way. And that's how I picked up the language, through the children. If I said something wrong, they corrected me. They never laughed at me. They always corrected my language.
What attitude did you encounter from the citizens around you?
I never had any problem with people. With the stores, we went in the store, people loved us. We always said, my husband used to go home because he opened 5:30, so around 3 o'clock he used to go home to take a rest. I had a whole line with women. Okay,
where was the store?
In New York.
In the city?
In Flushing.
That's in Long Island.
In Queens, Long Island. No, it's not Long Island. Now it's called Fresh Meadow. They just used to be Flushing. They just gave it a name called Fresh Meadow in New York.
So you have, all together now, you have 3 children.
3 children.
And 2 were born in Israel and 1 in the United States.
Yeah. He says, I'm the only one who can become president. He just, when he was little, he says, I was born in the United States.
How old are they now?
My daughter is 53. My son is, older one is 52. My younger one is 42.
And you have grandchildren?
My daughter has a son who is 18. And my youngest one, he married late, and they didn't want to have right away kids. He has a 10-month-old baby, little boy.
When you first came to this country, did you speak of the Holocaust to anyone?
No. Except, families, people, but not really.
If no, would you be able to share with us today why you could not or wouldn't speak of the experiences when you first arrived? When you first arrived?
When we first arrived, we talked about the family. We talked about it, but
about to other people.
I don't have to come in the store. When I had people used to come in, used to ask questions. Even when I was working in the bank, people used to see the numbers and says, I want to ask you something. I hope you don't mind. I said, I knew right away what they're talking about. I no, I don't. And they started to ask questions. I used to talk to them, yes.
What was their reaction?
Matter of fact, I had a guy, he was from a Catholic, he says, I'm from a Catholic church. He says, I would love for you to come and talk to them. But I think I am too shy for these things. That's why I didn't do this interview for all these years either. Here in the United States, 46 years. And I just never, except as I said, because of my new grandson, and I don't think I'm going to be around that he's going to be old enough to understand the Holocaust. So I hope this way he's going to be able to know what's going on.
In later years, did you ever speak of your experiences with anyone else besides your family, besides your children?
As I said, on the job, when I was in the bank, a lot of time people ask me questions. Yes, I did.
Now, when you first discussed the Holocaust with your children, how old were they? When did you discuss it?
As soon as they were old enough to ask questions. Asking questions, he says, Mom, where you got those numbers? Especially my youngest one is very, very close. He's constantly asking questions and wants to know how it was it. He says, I want to make sure that my son will know about it.
So
and that's why I said I'm doing this.
He had a reaction.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. My youngest one, he very, very, very much.
So he asked many
He's
details.
very sensitive. The youngest one is very, very sensitive. And he always want to know what's going on. How it was. His father, my husband is not a big talker, and he doesn't drink. But once in a while, they know already, if they give him a schnapps, his tongue loosens up, and he starts to talk about it. So sometimes they do it, special, that he should talk about it. Because my husband, when they get together from his city, they always talk about the camps. And my kids, especially as I said, especially my youngest one, he's very, very into it.
What do you feel is the most important lesson of the Holocaust?
It should never happen again. That's it. I hope they're going to be able to, with all this, what we do, be able to show that not to let it happen again.
Before we close, is there anything you would like to mention about your experiences during the Holocaust that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, I don't know. As I said, the best thing I ever did is come to the United States, because I don't think I would have been able to accomplish what we accomplished, although we both worked very hard. And as I said, I just retired 3 years ago because I wanted to build up my Social Security. If I would have retired at age 65, my Social Security would have been about $300 By continuing working and contributing all through the years, and matter of fact, I only worked part-time because they cut my hours, and I still build it up double. So that's a big thing for me, for the Social Security. But otherwise, thank God, health-wise, could be better, but it could be worse.
Well, I want to thank you, Sara Auerbach,
So, thank you very much.
for this very special day.
Thank you.
This has been an interview conducted by Dr. Mary Lou Brotherson, interviewing Sara Auerbach about her experiences as a survivor of the Nazi Holocaust. This interview will be included as a valuable contribution to the Oral History Library of the Holocaust Documentation and Education Center, Incorporated.